The world has watched over the past 24 hours as a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas took effect. For many, it's a moment of relief. Violence paused, hostages returned, and hope, however fragile, flickering again. But for those of us watching from the continent of Africa, it's also a painful reminder that in this world, not all lives are valued equally. And that's despite whatever it is the West talks about and preaches when it comes to equality and human rights. If you don't know me, my name is TJ. I'm Nigerian and British mixed. And on this channel, we talk about African geopolitics. So before we go any further, I want to make something very clear. My heart goes out to every family who have lost loved ones on any side of any conflict. I have compassion for Israeli and Palestinian families who alike have endured pain and suffering. I celebrate the safe return of every person held unjustly during this conflict. Whether they're Israeli or Palestinian, no innocent life should ever be caught in the middle of a war. However, I believe it's also essential for us to examine wars and those who wage them. And the best place to begin that examination is with the numbers. Hamas released 20 living Israeli hostages and 4 bodies after some years in captivity. In return, Israel freed nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, some held for decades, and over 500 under administrative detention without charge or trial, and that's according to Amnesty International. When the Israeli hostages returned, there was a wave of celebration. Global leaders spoke out, media outlets ran with wall-to-wall coverage, and convoys carrying freed captives were met with flags and flowers. But on the Palestinian side, the story looked very different. Families gathered cautiously outside prisons like Offa and Ketziot, waiting for loved ones who had spent years behind bars. Crowds formed, waving flags, chanting names, some holding photos of relatives who'd never returned. Yet that cautious hope was met with a very heavy security. Israel forces fired tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse gatherings, warning against celebrations. Flyers dropped all over Palestinian towns and settlements, threatening arrest for anyone seen waving a flag or chanting in support of what the Israelis classify as a terrorist organization. It was joy under surveillance, freedom shadowed by fear. The contrast between the Israeli released and the Palestinian released tells the story of this conflict and the imbalance therein. Jubilation and global attention on one side, anxiety and suppression on the other. The numbers make that imbalance even clearer. Since the conflict reignited in October 2023, more than 37,000 Palestinians have been killed, 70% of them women and children, and that's according to the United Nations. In Israel, around 1,200 were killed in the Hamas attack on October 7th. Every life lost is a tragedy. Mainstream media reveals whose lives are mourned publicly and whose are reduced to footnotes. Now let's compare that to Africa. While the world's cameras focus on Gaza, over 12 million people have been displaced across Sudan, and nearly 500,000 have died since fighting began in 2023. I live here in Uganda, and my building complex is filled with many Sudanese who fled the war, some children having witnessed the death of their own parents, now in Uganda, staying with uncles and aunts. In Congo's eastern provinces, more than 6 million people have been killed since the late 90s. Yet these African tragedies rarely dominate headlines. The Sahel continues to burn, with militant violence pushing millions from their homes in Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and northern Nigeria. These are not statistics, these are lives, yet the world seems to barely care. Donald Trump may have called the Gaza ceasefire a diplomatic victory, but when it comes to Africa, he has not just been silent, he's been opportunistic. He publicly claimed to have brokered the end of the conflict between the DRC and Rwanda, presenting himself as a peacemaker, while hundreds of thousands continue to die and millions remain displaced. Since his so-called peace deal, violence in eastern Congo has only escalated, particularly around the rich mineral areas where Western technology companies rely on cobalt and coltan. Trump still demands a Nobel Peace Prize for this supposed success, even as the bloodshed intensifies. It's an insult to every Congolese whose life was lost. Worse, his intervention helped open the door for more extraction contracts. I made a video about this before. It seemed that companies connected to global billionaires like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos secured new deals in the aftermath of that announcement, while ordinary Congolese families kept fleeing their homes. At least Trump's silence might not have deepened the suffering, but his actions turned tragedy into profit. When conflicts involve African minerals or Western military interests, morality takes a back seat to profit. The same double standard is at work here. Outrage follows influence, not principle. Here's what most analysts miss. In today's world, morality follows power. The side with economic and military leverage gets the empathy. The powerless are labeled collateral damage. Israel receives over $3 billion annually in American military aid, joint defense projects with Europe, and access to weapons the UN calls illegal for use in civilian zones. Meanwhile, African conflicts get humanitarian aid barely enough to feed refugees and promises that evaporate after photo ops. Netanyahu celebrates the return of his 20 citizens while presiding over one of the most destructive campaigns in the 21st century. More than half of Gaza's infrastructure has been reduced to rubble, yet he faces no sanctions, no ICC prosecution. Compare that to the African leaders sanctioned, threatened, and isolated for lesser actions. The hypocrisy is glaring. And there's another layer that makes all of this even more disturbing. Across many of these conflicts, both in the Middle East and Africa, extremist religion narratives are often used to justify mass violence. When people claim that God told them to act, the deaths of women and children are no longer seen as tragedies. They become divine missions.
So your dream is an Israel stretching from the Euphrates to the Nile?
So it's not my dream, it's a prophet that we got.
So the mission is to expand Israel from what it is today.
Also, yes.
To expand into Syria,
Yeah,
into Egypt.
exactly.
Are you excited about these plans?
I'm very excited.
But this entails that you would have to take over countries that already exist.
Right.
So we're talking about half of Iraq, we're talking about
Right.
Syria, we're talking about parts of Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt. How is that going to happen? There are people living in these countries. What's going to happen to them?
It's a great question. I don't know. I know it's going to happen.
You don't know any Palestinian
No,
personally.
personally.
So how do you feel about them as a people?
If he has his pride that this is his homeland, so I don't respect him. I won't spit on him and I won't do anything, yes? And my feeling is, this is not your homeland. It's the Jewish homeland. And one day, it's all going to be ours. And the Arabs know that. They also have the Bible.
That mindset eliminates all space for reason, dialogue, and accountability. From Gaza to northern Nigeria, from Congo to Sahel, armed groups and even political leaders invoke faith as the shield against moral judgment. They convince followers that killing in the name of their God is righteous, that bloodshed is obedience. I find that particularly offensive because it corrupts the very idea of faith and transforms religion into a weapon. These so-called holy wars are nothing to do with God. They're about power, profit, control disguised as devotion. Media plays its part too. The mainstream media generally covers African issues like weather reports, routine, impersonal, and stripped of humanity. This global bias should strike a nerve for every African, because what's happening in Gaza mirrors what's happening in Sudan, Congo, and Sahel. Ordinary people crushed between power and profit. Western corporations, often shielded by government policy, extract over $400 billion annually from African soil. Meanwhile, the continent loses $88 billion a year through insufficient financial flows. That's Africa's leverage, stolen before it can even build schools, hospitals, or defense industries. Certainly nothing strong enough to protect the people. So what can we do? The hard truth is this: in the global system, justice isn't given, it's negotiated. Africa has little leverage because it remains divided and dependent. Our leaders chase foreign loans instead of building continental strength. Our brightest minds often leave while foreign militaries secure their interests on African land. We have intertribal conflict where groups who have the same ancestral links now have murderous hatred for each other. But ladies and gentlemen, this can change. It must change. We must start with accountability, from leadership all the way down to citizens. Integrity, unity, and excellence must become the new standard. From Lagos to Nairobi, Kinshasa to Addis Ababa, Africa must cultivate leverage that commands respect. Because without leverage, there is no justice. Without unity, there is no peace. The world needs what Africa has: minerals, energy, innovation, and even the growing population. But until we negotiate from strength, others will continue to profit from Africa's pain. No one is coming to save us. No one is coming to save Africa. We must save ourselves by demanding fair trade, building sovereign institutes, and strengthening continental solidarity. So the question is this: will Africa keep watching, or will it finally stand together and turn moral outrage into geopolitical power? The time for waiting has passed. Our future and the future of our children depend on this. I would love to know what you guys think about this. I know this was quite a somber presentation today. If you have any thoughts, please leave them in the comments. I like to see if I've missed anything. But if you have nothing to say, would it be too much for me to ask you to write the words, "It's time to develop African leverage"? It just lets me know that you've watched the video to the end, you enjoy the content, you like what I do, and you want me to continue. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.